It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest have undertaken an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Daily Planet podcast monthly series, the Kryptonian Collection. Each month our council will gather to discuss, argue, and finally vote on whether a movie should be granted entrance into the illustrious Kryptonian Collection, a list of the greatest films our meager planet has to offer. My name is Scott Daly, your host, and a permanent member of the venerated Council of L, which is just a thing we made up. Joining me today is my co-host and fellow council member, Matt Freeman. Matt, are you ready for another Kryptonian Collection episode?
I sure am, Scott. This is going to be a unique one, and I'm really excited to get into it.
I am too. Also joining us this week, our current council member, Chad Acevedo. Chad, welcome back.
Excited to be back.
I always say Chad when I say your full name because I'm like prepping to say Acevedo, and I always mess up your name. So I'm sorry,
okay.
Chad Acevedo. There we go. And former council member Adrian Torres. Adrian, welcome back.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So Matt, why don't you jump in and explain the rules of the Kryptonian Collection for those that are listening for the first time?
Okay, here I go. So the rules of the Kryptonian Collection are normally very simple. The challenger will put forth his movie and an argument for including it in the collection. The council and our challenger will then discuss the film in detail, including its merits and flaws. Once this discussion is complete, the council will vote. Each of the three members gets one vote, and if the film receives at least 2 yes votes, it is entered into the collection, so 2 to 3 or 3 votes.
Yeah.
At this point, the challenger would also be awarded with the 3rd seat on the council, kicking Chad off. The challenger would then join us next month and get a deciding vote in that month's film. If, however, the film does not get the required 2 votes, it is rejected and forever banned from consideration.
Forever. That is true. That is normally how this thing goes. But we're going to do something a little different today because I decided to. Every 5 episodes, instead of having a challenger, what we're going to do is have a member of the council themselves volunteer a movie for consideration. This episode, it's going to be me because I came up with the idea, but episode 10 would go to you, Matt, and you would get to nominate a film. So 5 months from now, it will be you in the hot seat. So for this episode only, I'll be casting aside my council status and serving as a challenger. To ensure, however, we still get our 3 required votes, we have invited Adrian back to the show. That's why Adrian's here. He's not a current council member, but he has held the title in the past, and therefore he's worthy to weigh in on this film. Also, Adrian was the only person available, so thanks, Adrian, for taking the time to come back.
That's basically, I think, my de facto status, save for when we're doing Phantom Zone, is, hey, if you're around, you're going to do this with us.
That's a lot of our guests, to be honest with you. Are you free this week? Congratulations, you're our guest. Now
That's how you build a media empire. You're just like, are you free?
Yeah, that's true. Now, I need to say that just because I am serving in the role as the challenger this time around, even if somehow, inexplicably, my film loses, which is not going to happen. That's impossible. But even if it does, I'm not going to lose my spot on the council. I have to be a member because I'm the one hosting this and editing it. So, sorry guys, I can't get kicked off. I'm on this forever, and so is Matt, for that matter. So, but what film? What film did I nominate with my rare choice? What film did I nominate? I nominated Speed Racer, which is a 2008 action comedy family sci-fi sports movie directed by the Wachowski siblings. It's a live-action telling of the Japanese cartoon of the same name. And in this movie, our titular character, Speed Racer, it belongs to a family of car mechanic and racers, people with quote-unquote racing in our blood. All Speed really wants to do is become a world championship racer, but to do this, he's got to overcome the memories of his brother who kind of betrayed the family and broke away from them and then died in a tragic car accident, and also fight back against the organization that's trying to use and control him. So this is Speed Racer. How many of you guys before this had actually seen this movie?
I had not.
I had not either.
I'd seen it several times.
See, this is
Interesting.
I like this because this is what I wanted the Kryptonian Collection to really be. I mean, I think we did movies like Jaws, which are well-known movies that almost everyone's seen and everyone kind of generally agrees on their greatness. But last month we got to do Red Belt, which is a movie that I had never seen before, that is not as well known. And this month I get to bring this movie to you, which maybe you guys had heard of before but never really gotten to check out. So I'm excited to do this, and I love this movie, so you need to love this movie too. Before I get into y'all's opinion, I just wanted to share with you guys why I think this movie is worth it. There are three big things for me, and I think we'll get into them as we go through the podcast, but the three big things to me are the structure. I think this movie is structured so well from beginning to end. Every scene has a purpose, everything progresses the plot forward, and it's all in service to the character specifically. I think you could argue that this film could be a little shorter, but I wouldn't do that by just chopping scenes out. I would just chop little pieces that could add up to a lot. I still think every scene and every moment in this movie is important. And the beginning 15 minutes and the ending 15 minutes are just incredible work. The other reason is the style. This is a movie that doesn't look like anything else. It is rich in color. It is vibrant. It is fast-paced, but not confusing and overdone. It's beautiful. Nothing else looks like it. It's wholly unique in its style and in tone. And the last thing is the characters. I love the characters in this movie. I love the actors and their performances. I love the theme of family and how that permeates the entire film. These are the reasons I absolutely love this movie. But let's move on from me, and I will stop talking. Chad, why don't you go first? What did you think of Speed Racer?
I wouldn't say I loved it. I was thinking about what my main issue with it was and what issue with it as a whole was, and my general idea is kind of like in robotics, there's the uncanny valley, and I think the special effects, just the whole palette, it was somewhere between cartoony. If something's absolutely cartoony, people with cartoons like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I enjoy that, and CGI that looks absolutely real, I enjoy that. But this kind of weird mix just felt very odd and uncomfortable to me. Actually, I didn't enjoy it. Just the look of it, I didn't find enjoyable. Also, a movie about racing and speed, there's just everything's either just the up close with the faces or the car spinning on a track. And I appreciate that is very directly pulled from the cartoon. One of my first thoughts after finishing it was, thanks to the Wachowski siblings and also James Wong, the director of Dragon Ball Evolution, my two favorite cartoons from Toonami have been murdered and in film form. So it's really didn't like it that much. If I had to say some positives about it, I do love a chimpanzee in a tuxedo. That was great. That was probably the strongest moment of the film, and it was at the end. I do appreciate that. They did a good job of casting a young Emil Hirsch. I always, even since the girl next door, he just kind of has a very kind of a punchable face. It's the way I describe it. And the little kid they cast was extremely punchable. What else? I think they did a good job of trying to make some money by casting Rain, the K-pop star. Assuming that would even if it didn't do well in the U.S., it would hopefully do well overseas. I'm not sure if that happened.
No,
but it didn't. Oh wow, that's surprising. He's like Tom Cruise times Justin Bieber in Korea and Asian China. So you figure that would have helped. I guess not. but overall not great. Don't want to use up all my. I'm trying to think some more positive points.
No, I mean we'll get to
chimpanzees
more
are great.
That's fine. We'll get to more.
So overall, I wouldn't say I loved it.
Matt, you go next.
Yeah. So I'll do the I'll try to do like pro and then con, because I think that's a good structure that we've used before. Probably the most breathtaking and noticeable aspect of it, like Scott already mentioned, is the style and the visual panache. Like the first 15 minutes, and I mean even the first few scenes, which then lead into the first 15 minutes, are just absolutely mind blowing in their visual spectacle. Like they're doing these insane things that it's not that you've never seen them in any movie before, but they're just being done so well and consistently. It's like you feel like this is like a movie from some genre of movies of this type, but actually this is the only movie of this type. It reminds me of The Matrix in the sense that it's like inventing this whole new aesthetic that you can take it or leave it. And like with The Matrix, everyone immediately tried to copy it. Everyone, there were so many Matrix rip-off things and the people used all of the like action techniques and things like that afterward. People didn't really try to rip this off because it was going for this sort of cartoonishness on purpose, because it's based on a cartoon and everything kind of looks like the cartoon. But nonetheless, regardless of whether people thought it was good enough to rip off or thought it was appropriate to rip off, it really like carves out this visual niche for itself. The acting I thought was exactly what it needed to be, and it made the comedy work really well where it tried to. Like I actually thought the comedy came off pretty well. I thought the kid was actually really funny. Like I expected that to be terrible. But there were several parts where I was like, this is a pretty good B plot. I'm enjoying this. So shading toward the negative, I was fairly ambivalent about the story. So I'm actually looking forward to you explaining to me why the structure was great. And I haven't sat down and like thought about what is good and bad about the story. It's more that I thought the story was fine. Like it was a well put together story, but I didn't think it was like soul rending or anything like that. So I'm interested to get into that. And then my final comment, at the risk of going on and on, is that like I wonder if certain movies aren't literally made for like different age groups, because when I saw The Matrix for the first time, it was like the most amazing thing that had ever happened in the whole world. And I feel like if I saw this movie when I was younger, it might be similar. But I actually kind of got a headache from this movie, and I think I'm just old now. Like I can't. I was broken under the strain of this much visual intensity.
See that surprises me, because I think that while there's a ton going on, to me it always felt very clear. Like the Wachowskis set up some clear rules where something's always moving, but it's not always the same thing. Like if there's a car moving, the camera's still. If the car is still, the camera's moving, or they're moving together in tandem. So that kind of surprises me.
To be fair, I got a headache from Mad Max too. Like,
okay.
I think the problem may be that I'm not like, and so this is a kind of a complicated thought, but like I was reading what the critical response to this movie was, and some people were complaining about how busy it was, and I was like, that's interesting, because I bet 10 years ago I wouldn't have even commented on that. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, oh Jesus, my eyes. And I bet like 10 or 20 years from now, this movie will be unwatchable to me. Like I wonder if there's actually like a neurological or like optical process where people can't watch the same movies they used to be able to watch. I mean, I don't know. That was just kind of a random throwaway thought. This doesn't really speak to the quality of the movie. It was just kind of something that popped into my head. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
I think we'll get into all that. But first I wanted to jump over to Adrian, who I hope has some nice things to say about my movie.
Well, I have seen it several times, so I don't think I hate watched it all those times.
I don't know. You're known to do that.
Yeah, it is Adrian.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is different. There's only certain ones of those that I'll watch, but not for this. I saw this when it first came out because I was working for AMC at the time, and I actually built up our 70 millimeter IMAX print for it, so I got to screen it early. And there's times when you're watching a movie by yourself, especially in a large theater, that because you don't have the other people around there, you let your guard down a little bit more. You let your emotions come out to a higher degree because you're not worried about embarrassing yourself with other people around. And this movie just from the very beginning swept me away, and just this wave of joy came over me. And it's a very, very, very polarizing movie. It's definitely in the vein of you either love it or you hate it. There's not really any middle ground. You don't really hear people say, well, I liked this and that, but they find themselves directly in the middle. You're very much, I want to tell everybody about this movie because I'm completely in love with it, or I'm going to tell these people, don't waste your time. Don't see it. There's not a lot of middle ground with that. So it's really interesting to see the way that we're torn, because it's very much how you end up. You have Scott and I who are just going to be going all in with our love and moan and groan when people say things that are contrary to how we feel about the movie and how it's speaking on this different level, because the majority of the things that are on display in this film haven't really been replicated to the same level. It was interesting, Chad, that you mentioned Dragon Ball Evolution, because when I was watching this movie again, I thought this is the movie that taps into the elements that the Dragon Ball movies, the Street Fighter movies, the various other movies that were based off of either games or animated properties couldn't really make that jump, weren't able to have that transition into live action because they lost something in the process. And I actually felt that Speed Racer was able to not only hold on to it, but work it into something that was improved and wasn't hindered by the animation scope.
And I think that's a really good point, because my background with this movie is I wish I had seen it in IMAX, but I didn't, because to me the idea of making a Speed Racer movie was stupid. Like, this movie should not have worked. It should not have been good. It should have been just like every other old popular property cash grab film. But the difference here, I really think, is the Wachowskis, and they came into this movie knowing what they wanted to do with it, and they took it seriously. I mean, the movie has fun, but they forced you to take the world that they're setting up here seriously, and that, I think, is what makes it work. We're talking about structure. The first 15 minutes of this movie, from the very beginning to the end of that Thunderhead race, is incredible filmmaking. Like, it's so good, and it's so well structured, because it sets up everything you need to know about the next hour and 45 minutes of this film is in that first 15 minutes. And so it's dumping exposition on you, but in a really clever way that just hooks you immediately. Like, this idea of Speed literally racing against the ghost of his brother, and how it cuts back to between these three separate timelines, while explaining each one of these characters and their interactions with each other, and how they work together, and how everything comes together into this first race. It's perfect. It's so good.
Yeah, that first 15 minutes definitely earned so much goodwill with me that I was prepared to forgive a lot, actually. Because, as you say, it was doing these really clever visual tricks to very smoothly show you that it's cutting between the backstories of these characters, and using the framing device of this one race. And so I actually have a question about that scene. At the end, he's racing the ghost of his brother, and to my eye, what happened at the end there was he was like neck and neck with him, and then he basically lets the ghost win. Is that correct, or was that just me?
Yeah, he's actually pulling in front of him. Like you see him, he catches up to him, he starts passing him,
Yeah.
and then he lets go because he can't.
Okay.
And that, I mean, I think, and we'll get into this later, but I think the major difference here is between the first race and the final race is in the first race he's still kind of dealing with the death of his brother and what his brother did to his family name and his conflicted feelings about all that, and he hasn't, that is a symbol to me that he hasn't moved past it. He's unable to still move past it. He's still being haunted by his brother, and he can't fly by it. In the end, I mean, when he's racing all by himself and he's just doing it just for himself, and that is the growth of the character throughout the film.
Well, I think it's more than that at the same time.
Absolutely,
I feel, I mean, it's not just that. That is one aspect to it, but the majority of the reason why they're showing it is for Speed's character, for the type of character, for the person that he is this selfless person, and he has this chance to beat the record and make a huge name for himself. But he's going to win anyways, and he cares more about keeping that one shred of dignity, that one memory of his brother that's encapsulated in something good, and preserving it. And not only does he feel that, but you see it wave through his family. You see that through the majority of reporters who've either said good things or bad things about RACER, have that same feeling, that kind of wave of relief that this person, when they were young, when they were good, can still have this one moment, kind of like a shining light before everything went dark.
Yeah,
that may have been my favorite moment because no one explains it. Like there's that's why I asked the question, because I wasn't even 100% certain that I interpreted it correctly, but I also, got all of that subtext, and it was, very, very brilliant visual shorthand to communicate tons of information about a character. Like if you didn't have that, if you had just beaten the ghost, then that tells a completely different story about his character. So absolutely. I don't know. I thought that was really nice little microcosm of things the movie does well.
And that's why, when people, including both of you, might say that this movie goes on a little too long, but I love that it takes the time to set stuff up like this. It takes the time to set up each one of our characters. I really think every member of Speed's family, including Trixie, who's not really a member of the family but kind of is, gets their own arc throughout this movie. And the movie takes the time to have them all interact with each other and do all their little mini arcs. And I love that it does that, and it reinforces what one of the main themes of the film, which is about family and the importance of family, and making the best decisions for you and for your family. I love it. So, Chad, you mentioned Emil Hirsch, and as much as you think he has a punchable face, I think he's perfect in this film, because he just comes off as this aw shucks, innocent, but passionate but innocent, kind guy. He just pulls that off so perfectly, and it did work in that The Girl Next Door movie, and it also, I think, wasn't he in the Into the Wild film where the guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. He plays this role so well, and it works. It works so great here.
Yeah, the punchability actually works in his favor a bit, I think.
It can. It really can. I know. I mean that's quasi jokingly. I think it's just there's been a few roles like that he's specifically felt like, man, that guy just needs a punch in the face. But he is a very talented actor. That's probably why he's so talented, is you feel like he's kind of punchable. But one thing about that first 15 minutes, that was probably the highlight of the film. Other than Chim Chim and Spritl's relationship, I enjoyed the first 15 minutes the most. The only thing, and I wonder why Scott, I want this to you answer this, Scott, is it felt like a series of montages. The entire movie felt like a montage, like a 2 hour and 15 minute montage in general, because it's always kind of cutting back and forth.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that ties into the source material a little bit.
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
anime being a lot of quick cuts and fast moves and jumping around a lot. The thing that I think is remarkable about that is I complain a lot about tone changes and cutting between varying tones and how that really messes everything up. I think the Wachowskis really pulled it off here. I mean, one of the scenes that jumps to mind is when Speed is turning down Royalton's offer, and he's getting this really serious lecture, basically, where he's telling him about stock market fixing, race fixing. This really, like, this is a PG kids movie, and this plot centers around stock market fixing. But it cuts between that and Spritle and the monkey's B plot, where they're eating so much candy that they go on a sugar rush and get crazy. Like, cutting between these two scenes shouldn't work, and yet it does. And
okay, sorry. Those are things that was just so jarring. Like, I think the problem was they kind of, like, beat for beat wanted to make the cartoon, and I can appreciate that, but I just don't think it translates very well. Matt, I mean, I'm not sure how you can, and I do appreciate Roger Lamb as Tim Curry as Royalton. That was very solid. Roger Lamb is the man. He's a fantastic actor.
Oh, he's so good.
He really is. I'm so glad the Wachowskis hired and put him in every movie because he's fantastic.
His introduction in this film, like, even as he's being kind and offering all this stuff to everyone, like, you can immediately tell he's just so smarmy and like, but yeah, he like, and the switch when he switches from sucking up to Speed to being the asshole character, it's so well done. Like, I love that tone change within that scene as soon as he turns it down, especially after Speed gives this really heartfelt story about how he and his father reconnected after his brother's death. I don't know, yeah, like, the performances across the board in this film are incredible.
To mention another level with the tone changes that you were that you brought up, is even if you don't like them, the difference here compared to most movies is when you have the abrupt tone changes, it's because the makers of the movie or the editors didn't know what they were doing and they were trying to piece things together, and it's just kind of hodgepodge. Here, it's baked into the very core, from the actors to the writing to the editing, and even in a big piece, and I listened to it earlier today, is the music. If you go and you find Michael Giacchino, I know I pronounced that wrong, so I apologize.
It's close enough.
His score, the main two tracks that you want to listen to back to back is the Grand Old Prix, which is the beginning of the final race, which just sounds amazing on its own and sounds as if it's maybe 50 years old or so, because what it calls to mind is combinations of Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, the final battle there, and then the chariot chase from Ben-Hur. And it just sounds amazing and propulsive. And it goes directly from that to the number that's called Reboot, which is also in that same final run at the Grand Prix. And it's got the build up and swells of music, and then the music shifts just like it does in the movie when you've got all the talking heads and everything going on, and it's in the music has the swells and lulls with how it's going in the movie. And so even baked into the music, it's not as if they're just cutting in another piece of music into the movie, but that's how it's orchestrated. Is it goes in the same shifts and tones that they have in the way the movie's structured itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. Very well put. So I wanted to mention, Matt, you were talking about how you thought the story was good but not really anything special, and I generally agree with you. I mean, it's not a very complicated story. It's he wants to be a racer. He goes through this process of discovering what the truth behind the racing industry is, and he sets out to defeat it, and he wins in the end and defeats the bad guys. What I like about this plot, and it's not, the Wachowskis aren't subtle with their metaphors. Their subtext is almost text a lot of the cases. This is a film that is about creating art. They have the characters like come right out and say it at certain points. I think Speed's conversation with his mom, where she basically calls him an artist. This is a movie about an artist creating art and the world pushing back on them, and the business interests and trying to control them and make them fit into their system. And this movie is the Wachowskis saying, no, we're not going to do that. And the thing I love the most about it is you can kind of track this film through their career, because Speed Racer's first appearance at Thunderhead is The Matrix, which is the first time the Wachowskis appeared on the scene in any kind of big way, and they blew up big, and everyone loved them, and everyone wanted a piece of them, and everyone wanted to use them, and they followed that movie up with 2 Matrix sequels that weren't as good and didn't really work. To me, Speed Racer is the final race in that movie. This movie is the final race for the Wachowskis, in which they have finally gotten comfortable with who they are and what they want to do, and they're unabashedly going all in on this concept and doing exactly what they want to do and being exactly who they want to be. And the movie kind of feels like they knew it wasn't going to be successful, that a lot of people weren't going to like it, but they didn't care. They made the film they wanted to make, and there's something just so amazing about that to me.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've always admired about them. Like, even so, I have to admit I haven't seen their latest Jupiter Ascending. Is that even their latest? Anyway, I haven't seen that
Besides
either.
the Netflix show, yeah.
Yeah, but my impression of it is that they just sort of, they have their own very strong sense of aesthetics and story, and they just make what they think is good. And sometimes that really annoys me with directors, where I perceive that they're making the same thing over and over again, and I'm like, you're not listening to, like, you're not being objective. You're not actually growing as an artist because you're doing the same thing over and over again. You're being what's the words, like, solipsistic. But the Wachowskis, they actually do different things. They do very different things. I mean, like The Matrix versus this movie. So that I really admire them, and I thought this movie was very instructive, even just as a lens on their approach to things.
Absolutely. So, what do you guys think about the Racer X character? What's your general thought on Matthew Fox and his character in this movie, and how Racer X fits into the story? Who wants to go?
Well,
I somewhat assume this is just Jack's nightmare at the end of Lost. I guess he's going to sleep. He wakes up in wherever this is, and he's going around Thunderhead. Which, actually, speaking of Lost, Michael Giacchino is a composer from Lost, which is why this is so good. He's an incredibly talented guy. Everything he does.
He does basically everything. What's interesting about this one is it's Warner Brothers, and he's been doing mostly outside of, I guess, the Star Trek movies, has been doing nothing but Disney properties for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, I think Matthew Fox's character is an example of how this movie gets away with things it shouldn't be able to get away with, because it's such a monotone, stereotypically badass character, like cartoonishly badass character, but you're just sort of grinning. At least this was my reaction. Like, you're like, I see what they're doing. Like, instead of rolling your eyes, you're like, I see what they're going for, and it works. I don't know. There's a lot of I'd have to think about it really hard, because there's a large amount of trope awareness in this movie where nothing would work at all if you weren't somewhat familiar with probably like anime and just action movie tropes and racing movie tropes. I'm not at all familiar with the cartoon Speed Racer, so I don't even know. I'm probably missing all kinds of things there, but I still kind of got it.
Yeah, the thing I kind of love about Racer X is how the movie kind of turns into the skid with it, because you look at that character and I don't know about you guys, but the first thing I said is, "Oh, that's Rex Racer." I mean, that's
Yeah.
clearly Rex Racer. And the movie almost knows you're going to do that because it has Speed Racer say immediately like, "Oh, that's definitely my brother." Like, that's definitely him.
Right.
And then the movie kind of throws a curveball at you and it's like, "Oh, it's not him." But oh no, it actually is him. I just love how like it's very aware of itself, and, and to do that it was very clever in my opinion. I also kind of like how he ties thematically into what the movie's saying about family. I love the part at the end when he's asked by his nameless assistant, who I don't know if we ever get her name, but she says, was like, are you going to tell them? Are you going to ever reveal the truth to them? Like, do you feel like you should have been honest with them? And he goes, yeah, that's just like a mistake I'm gonna have to live with. And I love this idea that to this movie, like sticking with your family and being um, remaining a part of your family is the most important thing. And Rex, as much as he was trying to do good, wasn't honest with his family, didn't include his family, shunned his family in order to attempt to fix things. And because of that, his punishment is he feels like he can never be part of the family. Whereas Speed looked to that and made different choices and stayed with his family and is rewarded for it. I love that. And I love that especially coming from a pair of siblings who have chosen to make art together. They make their movies together. And I think that says something about how they view their relationship with each other as well as their family, but specifically their relationship with each other. I think that's magical to me. I love it.
Yeah. There was neat interplay where there's basically there's three brothers, right? I mean, the kid is also their brother.
Yeah.
And there's every once in a while there's a little nod to the fact that like this is going to happen to you too. I thought that was a neat touch,
Yeah.
neat device.
Yeah. Okay, so how good is John Goodman in this film? Because I love him. I love him. He's so good in this movie, and like I don't know, like I honestly don't know if I would have enjoyed the movie as much with someone else in the Pops character, because he just comes off as just this earnest, kind, caring father like throughout all of it, and it's so wonderful. Like the scene between the two of them, where he basically tells Speed that you're always welcome here. Like, I made mistakes in the past. I won't regret it. And then just like little line drops throughout the movie where he's like, the most important thing I've done in my life, except for marrying my best friend, is my boys. And you're just like, oh, John Goodman, you're so good, man.
Yeah. I wonder if these actors watched a lot of anime like to prepare for this or something, because that's another, like, a lot of these characters are anime archetypes.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched that much anime really, but like there are certain archetypes that are especially strong in anime. One of them is like the kind of buffoonish father figure with a mustache who's stern but fair and is but has a temper and so forth. I guess it's not even just an anime thing, but it definitely, John Goodman really like nailed exactly that archetype. And of course, it wasn't just playing a cardboard cutout. He breathes life into it, but really all the characters are sort of archetypes, and it works.
Yeah, and
I think it comes down to directing. Really, I doubt any of them were made to watch the original show. Some of them may have been offered, but I think it really comes to down to directing, and that's how you get those performances. I think you can easily describe the tone, and as you mentioned, the archetype that you're wanting them to tap into. Because more than anything, it's a heightened state that they're trying to achieve. It's being big and boisterous, and instead of playing low with certain scenes, you're going to play over the top, and then scenes that you might normally play over the top, you're going to play more serious. and with a lighter warmth, just to get that feeling across. And you definitely get that with Pops a lot. But Susan Sarandon has you can tell that she hasn't seen any of this stuff, and she's just going off of the directing that she gets, and she brings a completely different energy to everything, but she's still buying into that same movie and world that they're wanting to create. And even jumping back to Matthew Fox a minute ago, you can tell that Matthew Fox it understands what he's playing in the world that he's existing in the couple scenes where he has just a little smirk that he throws out lets you know. In most other movies, if he's playing that part, you can even jump to something like the really crappy Alex Cross that he was in, and people were having him buy into a different way and be completely serious. Whereas this one, years earlier, yeah, he is playing this badass character at points, but then you can also tell with that smirk that it brings a more playful level to the role that you can see him buying into and enjoying his time instead of being overly serious with it.
Yeah, I think for these performances to work, it required all the actors to really just jump in and commit to it fully. And you're absolutely right. Every single one of these actors has fully committed to their role. I mean, Christina Ricci is really great, and she's playing the stereotypical anime girlfriend, but she brings so much energy to it and warmth, and she's a badass character in this. I mean, she gets her chance to drive. She's got her own helicopter. She has her own wants. Like I love the scene where the first time she meets the RACER family is when they try to get bombed, and she sees the car drive away and explode, and is just like in love with this family just from that moment on. She's so great.
Speaking of that scene, Scott, would it have made more sense just to throw the bomb versus putting it in the car, snapping a stick to jam the gas down and have it drive off?
Probably, but that was awesome.
Where's the flair there?
Problems. That's not how they solve problems in the RACER family. Nope. They always solve problems with driving in cars.
Exactly.
It might be just the lens that I'm watching the film through isn't working. I'm looking for a little more realism. That might be my biggest problem.
Yeah, you can't look at this movie for realism.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but like on characters, like I think Susan Sarandon's a little flat, but John Goodman, American Treasure. He honestly, I think he's a better litmus test. If you haven't seen a movie, if he's in it, it's probably good in general. Yeah. Other than this, I think he's. I'm just playing Scott. I think if you look at a cast of characters, if he's in it, it's probably going to be a good film. Like you said, Christina Ricci, anything she's in, she's usually really good in. I think the John Goodman definitely, talking about he had the best lines. I think one of them was someone said, "Oh my god, a ninja," to which he replied, "More like a nanja." Terrible at passes for a ninja these days. That's fantastic. I remember thinking like that's stupid. Like no, that's actually pretty funny. That's a funny dumb joke, and it's very much straight from the cartoon.
And I like that scene, the night ninja fight scene. I love that scene, and like it's ridiculous. Like this is a racing movie, and suddenly we break out of this mold into this 5 or 10 minute action scene. Which is silly and over the top and cartoony and ridiculous, but it works. Not only does it work, but I think the scene is doing something important outside of just being a funny action scene. But it's literally demonstrating that Speed Racer cannot do this on his own. He needs the help of his family, and because John Goodman is the one who defeats this ninja by using his wrestling moves, which that was a really great cut to show his wrestling. Was it his ring? Did they cut to it show his wrestling ring? That was so good. That. Yeah, that was so good. That scene, in any other movie, I would be rolling my eyes at this ridiculous, childish scene. But it's so good.
But it goes back to what you were mentioning earlier, Scott, with the structure of the film, because you're able to buy into having this aside be action-packed and goofy, because we have the scene earlier in the movie where we first see Racer X, where he's saving Rain's character, and they've got the big semi trailer that's driving that's got a living quarters and everything inside it, and they've got the big showdown with the guns shooting into the side of it and changing the color palette several different times. But within the trailer itself, while this is happening, they've got lots of slapstick hijinks going on with the guy and his tank of piranhas at the same time. So you've already been given that feeling of the quasi level of danger, if you want, mixed with the action, mixed with the joking elements to it. So when you take it to another heightened degree with the ninjas later, you're able to relax and not so much question it coming out of nowhere, unless you're Chad, who's looking for the realism and probably watching things like Law and Order and writing down all the mistakes that they're making.
It's like that's not how you glove. That's not how you pick up bullet casings. Come on.
You can't object to that.
That is way off.
That's
This is civil court.
That's not how that racing car would go spinning through the air and tail kicking into another spinning car.
Though, also, like, this is actually an incredibly violent PG movie. I guess it's all kind of implied violence, and they pop into foam in like the the protection foam whenever they crash. But I think some people definitely die, and a guy gets his finger nibbled on. But there's quite a bit of implied violence for a PG movie.
It's a very dark. I mean, it's obviously very light and fun and joyful, but there's very dark moments in this film, and I kind of like that. That this is definitely a movie that is geared towards children, but it's not afraid to challenge them emotionally. I mean, his brother dies. He's real. His father business is getting shut down. Like there's very real in-world consequences in this thing. So I kind of like that. Yes, it has the child-like moments of the silly fighting and the monkey and the boy like getting into mischief. But yeah, it isn't afraid to take itself seriously, and it kind of demands that you do too.
Though once again, this is it's about corporate corruption and potentially like your business getting shut down. And once again, this is came out in mid 2008, so pre-financial crisis. I really find that interesting because that's what everyone wants to make art or books, film. They want to talk about financial mismanagement, corporate corruption, all post 2008, 2009, and this is before that, which that's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And speaking of, the one thing about Chim Chim and Spritl's mischief, when they go, I'm serious, when they go break into to Royalton's plane to get the candy, the kid has a very sexual response in opening the candy drawer. You guys had to know.
That's the realism that you're looking for, right?
There it was. It made it a little bit uncomfortable for me.
So I did want to touch. You guys have generally said that the first 15 minutes are your favorite. For me, the final race is my absolute favorite, and I think part of it is like Adrian and I were talking about the structure, and I think the final minutes working is because of how good the first 15 minutes are. I love that final race. I love the last lap of that final race. I love from the moment that he defeats Cannonball and restarts the car, he's basically already won. And the movie treats it like that. The final lap of this race isn't really suspense. It's literally a victory lap for Speed. And that's why the intercutting between all the different characters cheering for him doesn't lessen the suspense, because he's already won. And it's just this glorious moment of him fully realizing who he is and what he wants. And I keep ending all my points with "it's so good" this episode, but that's just because it's true. This final race, when Speed is talking shit to Cannonball, I jumped out of my chair because it's so great, and it again works to his arc where he's now confident. He's now the person that knows exactly who he is and what he wants, and he's talking shit to Cannonball Taylor, this guy who he looked up to so much. And then that final moment when like everyone's cheering. Like the first, I was in my home by myself, but the first time I watched this, I was on my feet throughout that entire sequence. It's just this joyous, wonderful moment of perfect realization, and it's so good. I don't understand how you can't love this movie.
Well, no, it's it's absolutely fantastic, and you even have the payoff to a mini arc, because basically almost every single character in the movie who's in 2 scenes or so has some type of fully formed arc. Even what's his face? One of the racers, the Gray Ghost, even has a mini arc, and then the whole reason that he's pissed off is because he's been told that he was going to have this race fixed and he was going to be the guaranteed winner, and when he doesn't win that race, he's pissed off for the rest of the movie, and that's why he's trying to take it out on other people. But Richard Roundtree, who's only in the movie for about 5 minutes or so, is shown in flashback in a story. He's referenced a couple times, and you think he's good, but then you hear a story about him and he might be mad, and then he seems just kind of like a guy who took advantage of his situation. Ends up coming around, and you kind of feel that he realizes that maybe that was a mistake, and he's cheering on Speed at the very end, and you feel glad that he's come around to kind of realizing the errors and being on this kid's side and cheering him on. When before it seemed that he was very much in the pocket of the corporate guys.
Yeah, and I think that's a comment to kind of, I'm going to get really cheesy here, but to what good art can do. In this, I think Ben Burns is a character who, you're absolutely right, was made all the wrong choices and took advantage of a situation and got like won a race that was fixed and existed within the system happily, but was kind of upset about it. Like the scene where Speed asks him about the fix, and he says, people thought we were enemies, but we really liked each other. You're right. He's been transformed by this performance, but at the end of it, and the thing he screams when Speed finishes is this changes everything, and that's a powerful little mini arc for him. One of the ones that I love is Sparky's at the end when Speed shares the milk, the victory milk, with Sparky, and this look on his face, he's so happy, and he's a character that is also barely in the movie. He's mostly in the background, but he gets these little moments. Every character gets little moments with Speed where like he's like, I wouldn't be here without you, and so he shares the milk with him at the end, and that's touching.
Well, he shares the milk at the end because it's symbolically bringing Sparky officially 100% into the family.
Right.
He was always the mechanic friend and everything, but he was kind of filling that older brother void that was lost when Rex went away. And at the beginning of the movie, when he's trying to read the newspaper and everything, he's continually being shushed by Pops and everybody because it feels like it's digging up old dirt when he's just trying to be helpful, and he's excited for Speed. So when Speed finally lets him share in the drink of milk at the end is basically saying, we've always considered you part of the family, but this is here, you're 100% part of the family. You don't have to worry about not being one of us. You are officially 100% one of us.
Yep, I agree. What do you? But Adrian and I have been hogging this conversation. What did you guys think of the end? Were you happy the way it was done? Matt, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Yeah, I did, and I like your comment about it being like a victory lap. I guess for me, there wasn't a lot of tension in it, so there was more tension before the race started. Like I was enjoying it before the race started because like there's all these conflicting parties at play. The evil businessman is trying to stop him, and he has the great like, I'd prefer it if he doesn't even start the race. and like when the race starts, I was pretty immediately like, okay, he's gonna win. But and he's gonna win because he's the star of he's the hero of the movie, obviously, but also just the way the scene went, I didn't have a lot of tension into it. And this isn't, I'm not saying like, oh, it was awful. I'm just saying, relative to what had come before it, it didn't blow me away quite as much. I mean, I keep thinking, like, I've been quiet this whole time actually because I'm like pondering the miracle of the tone that this movie manages to strike, and like how the type of tension that it usually maintains. So when I say tension, I mean it in the like storytelling sense of you are engaging viewer interest by keeping a certain, important thing uncertain in the viewer's mind. And so like while normally a corny ninja fight would be really annoying because you first of all it's childish, and second of all because you know how it's going to resolve, the good guy is going to win, and it's boring. In this movie it's not boring because the way they set it up, the details of how they set it up, you're more interested in seeing how things unrelated to the ninja fight will play out, like the fact that the dad is involved now and things like this. So there's always more going on than the ninja fight or the race. Like it's never just a question of, is this person going to win a race? It's always a question of, okay, how, like, what is the complicated fallout of this on the characters? Because you actually really do buy into the characters, and you're really with the characters, even like the corny fake, like archetypal characters that you don't think of as that's what's kind of blowing my mind, is on like even Rex Racer, who I just said is like cartoonishly badass and barely a real character. You're actually sufficiently into his character that you care what's happening to him at various points, and you're not just rolling your eyes, and you're it's pretty neat. I've come around on this movie, Scott.
I'm glad. Yeah, I love the moment at the end when Rex is just watching him go, and like there's this just look of satisfaction on his face that like he sees that Speed has reached his true potential, and he sees that Speed has succeeded everywhere that he failed, and he doesn't even really say much in that scene, but you can just tell, like especially after they do the callback to listening to the car, because the car is a living, breathing thing, which is a great setup and knockdown that the film does. But yeah, like every character in that final lap, like they're cutting between them all, and they all have a reason and stakes in it that are kind of different, but you care about them all, every single one of them. Even Bill Burns, is it? What's his first name? I forgot. I watched the movie 3 times and I can't remember his name.
Ben Burns.
Ben Burns, thank you. Yeah, everyone has stakes. Everyone has something in it, and you're right. It's beyond just the race itself. Like you're right. I knew Speed was going to win this race, but it's how it was done that was so impactful to me.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting. I've never consciously noticed this, but that's actually how all good racing movies are. Like all good racing movies are actually about what does this mean for the characters and their futures and their relationships with each other. Even ridiculous ones like Talladega Nights. It's not really not really about who wins the race.
Yeah.
But they don't normally become the star child at the end of the race.
Oh yeah. That was awesome.
All right. Does anyone have anything else they want to talk about that we didn't cover? Chad, this is your last moment to say mean thing.
I don't know. Just trying to soak it all in.
You mean the majesty of this incredibly well-made, wonderful movie?
You guys, some pretty compelling arguments. The strongest argument against it right now, I think I may have left, is if we're comparing this to what's made it into the Kryptonian Collection already, are Jaws, Raising Arizona, and Silence of the Lambs. So the bar is very high, and the definition of what makes it in is fairly nebulous. So I'm trying to compare it to those and say, does it clear the hurdle? I don't know.
That's a fair point.
But like like I started with, there is a chimpanzee in a tuxedo.
Okay.
There's a lot of ammo right there.
Yeah, I mean, I know how Chad may be feeling right now because I can't remember which movie it was, but there was one where I was like really ambivalent and leaning negative on some particular movie, and it wasn't even so much like an argument as just like hearing people talk excitedly about what they liked about the movie made me just like the movie, just like by absorption. So I think it's interesting how this process works.
Yeah, and I think, one of the reasons I picked this movie was, like Adrian said, it's very polarizing. So, um, I don't expect any of you to love this movie as much as I do because I am obsessed with this movie. Like I said, in preparation for this, I watched it 3 times, 3 days in a row, and enjoyed it just as much on the third time that I did on the first time. So, but I was hoping that I could give you a window into why I like this movie so much, why this movie worked so much for me, and why the movie is kind of a miracle. Because, like you said, Matt, this really should not have worked as well as it did. Like you look at all the pieces and you think there's no way this put together would make a good film, and yet it does.
Yeah,
because of the directors.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all the Wachowskis. Anyone else directing this film, it would have been awful. Any other director, any other time, to me, this is a perfect time, perfect amount of technology. They actually tried to make this movie in the mid-90s, and they had cast Johnny Depp as Speed Racer. Thank God that fell through.
Well, I even think if they pass it off to somebody like what's his name, McTeague, or I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but the guy who did
Mick G.
No. The guy that did V for Vendetta, and then also directed the Ninja Assassin movie. Both properties that the Wachowskis wrote the scripts for, but had somebody else direct because they were working on other projects at the same time, so they couldn't be as hands-on. Those V for Vendetta, I know they were more involved in and directed portions of, but then Ninja Assassin, which was very much their, hey, we're going to put Rain in this movie so that we're able to get good box office overseas, they had him direct, even though they wrote the script, and you can very much tell the difference between something that they're fully involved in and something that they've handed off to somebody else to direct what they've written, which is interesting, seeing as how they made Sense8 with JMS, Michael Straczynski, but them working with Tom Twyker on Cloud Atlas, that they're able to heighten their strengths even more working with better directors as opposed to people that they're just handing things off to. So it's very much the director's involvement that makes things that much stronger.
It's true, but Ninja Assassin was an incredible film.
That's a different discussion.
I really want to do a deconstructing series on the Wachowskis. Matt, we need to put this on the list sometime. Obviously, we talked about this movie at length, but diving into the rest of their filmography, I think, is fascinating because I think their misses are almost more fascinating to me than their hits. Like, I don't think Jupiter Ascending is a particularly good movie, but it's a fascinating movie to look into and examine exactly what they were trying to do. I know you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it. I really want to, especially after this discussion, because I still somehow think The Matrix is underrated. Like,
I think you're the only one that thinks that.
Well, I mean,
one
obviously
of the most
everyone
beloved
admits
properties
that
of all time.
Right. It is, but now it's popular to be like, oh, The Matrix. It's like, no, you have forgotten how good The Matrix is. You need to watch it again.
Well, and I think one of the things that happens with a film like The Matrix is that when it really defines a style, and then people have watched that style for 10, 15 years, they forget that this was the origin point of it all. That this is what defined it, and that importance of what the film did is kind of lost.
Right. I've actually thought about, like, when I eventually show this movie to my kids in, however many years, I'm going to have to be like, this list of movies that you love, pretend that they don't exist. Because they wouldn't without this movie. Seriously.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and that's you should write an article on that, Matt. I think you should write that.
Okay.
Do it.
All right.
All right. Before we get on to you guys voting, I just wanted to my final conclusion to my argument. I just wanted to read a quote by someone else who loved this movie, who happens to be Film Crit Hulk, one of the writers for Birth Movies Death, and just I'm not sure what his actual career is because he keeps it very secret. I know he works in Hollywood in screenwriting, and I don't know, but he loves this movie very much, and this is what he had to say. This is as vibrant, swelling, and unapologetic a movie as they come. You just have to let yourself accept it for what it is, a fever-induced amalgamation, a PG telling of Mario Kart writ reel. And it gets there. Boy, does it get there. It's a weird miracle of a movie best exemplified by those transcendent final laps, when all the bombast and bone-crushing of the RACER cinematic impact slowly slip away into the triumphant ethereal moments where we seem to be racing on air itself. So that is my conclusion. That is a better way of saying my argument that I ever could, because he's a much better writer than me. I love this movie, and I hope that you guys will do the right thing and vote it in. So, Matt, I will release it to you to tally the votes.
Okay. Then I will not vote first if I am the one who's tallying the votes.
All right.
First, Adrian. What is your
Yes.
What is your verdict? Yes.
I mean, it's simple as that. I can't speak as glowingly as I did and say, yeah, this film's a piece of shit. Unless I was a horrible individual, so we'll save that for another time. But yes, it should be in. It belongs in. It's a great film. It was an interesting point that Chad made with comparing this to the other movies that have come before, and I think while it may not clear the same hurdle with the level that we normally judge the other ones on, that this sits a completely different hurdle in another lane all its own to allow different sorts of films. And the other ones are very, even though Raising Arizona is a comedy, all those other movies are kind of on a different, more traditional level when it comes to grading and deciding how great things are. And this one is just in a lane of its own, and I think it'll allow other movies to possibly get in the future or to come into the conversation that break that stringent mold of traditionally viewed films.
All right. Noted.
Agree.
Yeah. All right. Chad, your verdict.
Well, surprisingly, I think I'm going to vote yes. I kind of came in, I would say, leaning no, but fairly convincing argument by Scott and Adrian, if not convincing, passionate. And, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a thumbs up.
All right.
Well, the pressure's off you now, Matt.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I came into this sort of telling myself that I was going to vote no unless there was a compelling argument for, and the reason wasn't that I didn't think it was good. It was that I didn't think it was necessarily up to the standard of the, vaunted Kryptonian Collection, or in other words, just like, is this one of the best movies ever made? And I think like there like just the period of time where I was silent and I was just like grappling with like, how did this movie accomplish this tone and actually work and make you care? Like it has so many balls in the air and it actually works. And the places where maybe it didn't quite, like, to me saying like, oh, this car chase scene was too long, is very superficial relative to what it actually accomplishes. So all that to say, yes, I do think this is a movie that deserves to be watched and even studied. I think I intend on going back and literally studying how they do certain things, because understanding why tone works the way it does is something that I care about a lot. It's something that I think about a lot for my writing. So yeah, it looks like this was a 3 for 3, Scott. So congratulations.
I am so happy. Thank you guys so much. I'm glad you all like the movie, or at least respect the movie enough. This is great news. I'm glad it's in the collection. I would love, Matt, for you to sit down and study the movie, and then you and I could talk more about it. Because I could keep going for another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours if we wanted to, getting really down into the details of this movie. I'd love to do that, but for the sake of time today, I don't think we should do that. But hooray, it's in.
All right.
That's
it's exciting.
awesome.
Now we can get more people to see it.
Yeah, I hope so. So we're going to do this again in a month. I haven't quite worked out yet, Matt, how this is going to work, because we kind of switched it up and didn't do our usual format here. So I don't know if we just we can't just kick Chad off, but Chad's been on for a long time now.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, you're smug, Scott.
Oh, thank you.
That in. But actually, if you like Speed Racer, I don't know if you actually can be smug.
There you go. See, I was never smug, Chad. I just love movies that are good.
Just love camp all along.
I do. So yeah, we will figure this out, and hopefully we have a new challenger next month who brings another really interesting film to us.
Yeah. So if you're listening, you can just email us with your challenge, by the way, and we will consider or Facebook us or Twitter us or anything.
Yeah,
really.
and any of those things, which are all in the show notes, and we're about to talk about right now. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Adrian, would you share where you can be found on the internet, and if you have anything you want to plug?
I am on Twitter at @YoAdrianTaurus. I don't have anything really to plug except for what we're going to be recording next week.
Which is
the next episode of Phantom Zone. And it's going to be in the middle of a very busy week because I get, when we're recording now, this will probably come out on Friday. So I'm going to be getting married the day after we record this. And then 4 days later, we're going to be recording Phantom Zone, and we're going to be covering a fantastic, horrible fever dream of a film that came out earlier this year, I Am Wrath, with John Travolta.
I can't wait to watch that. I can't wait. Yeah, it's gonna be a crazy week. The other thing, actually, let's go. Chad, you can go first. Sorry, before we get into my stuff.
Oh, it's C. Acevedo 1982.
If you follow Chad, you can see when he replies to some of my tweets calling me pretentious.
Yep. Pretty much. You have one personal troll.
Matt, how about you?
I'm on Twitter at @MoreDinamail, and I can't think of anything that I've seen recently. I will comment that my wife and I finished watching The Office, the American version, for probably the 5th time.
Oh wow!
And every time I rewatch this series, I see new episodes somehow.
I don't understand how that's possible.
I don't either.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Anyway.
I am on Twitter as well, at ScottDaily85. Our podcast Twitter is at Daily Planet Films, and you can email us, like Matt said, with suggestions or improvements at dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com, or you can just go to our website and comment. That's dailyplanetfilms.com. Next week, like Adrian said, as soon as we finish recording that episode of Phantom Zone, I, as well as Adrian, as well as Gentry, are going to Fantastic Fest, which is the genre film festival down in Austin. So we're going to be similar to last year. We're going to be doing some coverage on the website for that. Last year I just did a summary of all the movies I saw on any particular day. I might switch it up this year. I haven't decided yet. But we're also going to try, since the three of us will be down there, we're going to try to record a podcast on location with the three of us in a room. We'll see how that works. I don't know how the sound quality is going to be, but we'll give it a shot and just talk about Fantastic Fest in general. Because I think Adrian, I'm not speaking for you, but I think we're all pretty excited.
Yeah, just slightly, just a little bit, but just a bit. My fiance, soon to be wife, we were looking over several of the events that they're going to have. And she goes, "Wait, they have what event?" And I'm like, "Yeah, these are all the ones that they've announced." And I even mentioned one to Scott that he didn't know about and got him excited about it too. So there's going to be a whole bunch that's going to be covered. It'll be interesting recording it because I don't know how sane or sober we might be at the time.
I think that'll make for a very interesting podcast.
Of course.
Other than that, the only other new announcement we had was this podcast is now on Stitcher. So if you use Stitcher as your podcasting platform of choice, you can subscribe to it on there. Stitcher is also pretty great because they have their own review system in there. So if you're using Stitcher and you want to leave a review, please do. If you're using iTunes and you want to leave a review, please do. If you're using something else, you can just send us a nice email and telling us how good we're doing. That'd be nice. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I know I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it gets kind of monotonous hearing people ask for reviews. But like, I just want to emphasize how nice it actually is to get feedback, and how much we would appreciate it if you would leave a review. That's all.
Absolutely. And Matt, we got a review. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
We got a review since have been begging people for review. We got a new one. So this is from Caffeine, Cats, and Cinema.
Okay.
The great thing about this podcast is not only the variety of movies, TV shows, games, etc. that they talk about, but also the perspectives they all provide. You can tell that the hosts both love movies and really care about helping the audience find something good to see too. I listen to it every week and always look forward to it when each episode drops. So thank you to Caffeine, Cats, and Cinema for that wonderful 5-star review. And please keep them coming, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Kind of like Speed Racer.
Me too. Yeah.
All right.
Everything's so great.
Yeah, it is. So that's all we had for this week. Chad, Adrian, thank you guys so much for joining and for voting for my movie. I'll give you your checks